Grief can be really heavy and something that we carry basically for the rest of our lives. But one thing I've learned from the Camino is that walking is actually a helpful way to process grief. I'm about to hit 5 years since my mom passed away, and partially in her honor, I wanted to share some lessons that I have learned from the Camino that have helped me to deal with my grief. I hope that they are useful for you. Let's talk about how walking and pilgrimage can play a role in the healing journey. If you are grieving and feel yourself drawn to the Camino, or even just to walking, there's a reason for that. Walking is one of the oldest, most natural ways to process emotions. It gives our mind space to wander and our bodies a rhythm to follow. When we grieve, that movement can help us shed some of the weight of our grief, one step at a time. I had walked the Camino twice before my mom died, and she was always my biggest supporter. She really wanted to walk one someday herself, but ultimately was not able to. So when she passed away at the very beginning of COVID, not of COVID, it was really challenging to figure out how to deal with the big emotions that were coming my way. My previous experiences on the Camino helped me to realize that I probably needed to do another one to help process my grief, but also in honor of my mom. And so I set the goal that I wanted to arrive in Santiago on her 70th birthday and get my Compostela for her as a way to honor her and a way to give her a pilgrimage of her own, even though I knew she had finished her earthly pilgrimage. It was a way to help me process, but also it was something I could do for her even though she was actually gone. Walking gave me space where I couldn't hide from my emotions or distract myself. Walking is a full body affair. You can't be numb and move. At first, I really struggled to go on walks after my mom died. Every time I would walk, I would actually end up crying because all of the emotions that I had been spending time pushing down just naturally found their way out. So I didn't really want to go on walks very often. But then one day I was on a walk and I was crying and I realized, who cares? Who cares that I'm crying? This is how grief looks in this moment for me. And with that, I really remembered the lessons that I had from the Camino, where I also had moments where I had emotions sort of overflowing and bubbling, and I realized this is just who we are. This is just how we process emotions. The walking really gives us space and time to feel things that we normally would push down. I remembered the blessing of walking by actually taking one step at a time. So from that, I gradually allowed walking to be a place where I could actually go to process emotions. Honestly, I should have realized it much sooner, because one of the things I learned on my first couple of Caminos is that walking really forces you to live in the present. And so it was not uncommon for me on my Caminos prior to this to actually feel emotional at random times. So I'm not sure why I didn't think of walking as a way to deal with the grief of losing my mom. But once I realized that that was true, I tried to embrace it more fully and then gear my walks towards preparing for a Camino in her honor. That being present in the moment allows us to actually feel the good and the bad, which again is very much part of the Camino experience. Some days you're going to have a wonderful time. I loved climbing over the Pyrenees. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. I could hear the sheep and the cows. I was struggling to breathe, but appreciating all of the views and meeting new people. That was a good day. But not all days are like that on the Camino. There was also the day that I limped with both legs going into Astorga and ended up sitting in front of a giant crucifix and having a really serious conversation with Jesus about suffering and why it happens and what we do with it and what it meant that he suffered for us. So really, the Camino and pilgrimage is a giant metaphor for life. This is what we are doing. We are struggling and taking things one step at a time with the long-term goal of hopefully arriving in a place where we will be welcomed. One of the best things about walking the Camino with my dad after my mom passed away is that I was able to share with him my love for arrival in Santiago and spending time in the plaza. That is literally my favorite place on earth. You get to sit there and you get to watch people come in from all different directions, people who have been on really different journeys, but everyone comes in sort of limping and exhausted, sunburned, dirty, but with the largest smiles on their faces. And that, I think, is a foretaste of heaven. Walking the Camino to process grief actually reminds us of what the path of our lives looks like. It is not easy, it is not always fun, but it's also not always sad. And there is a destination that we are aimed towards. Right? This is one of the views that the church has on what it is that we're doing. We are pilgrims. We are a pilgrim church on earth. We are working our way through life step by step for arrival to a specific destination, to be greeted by the saints who have gone before us. And so walking with my dad in honor of my mom and then arriving in Santiago meant that we could reflect with joy on the experiences that we had just had, but also be filled with hope for the idea that we were going to see my mom again in the future. One of the most meaningful parts of walking the Camino with my dad was that we actually carried her with us, not just in spirit, but in a tangible way. And did you know that you can request a Compostela not just for yourself, but in honor of someone else? When you go into the pilgrim's office to get your Compostela, let them know that you are walking for someone who either is deceased or is physically unable to ever walk the pilgrimage themselves. And you can get Vicariae Pro written on your Compostela as a signal that you walked for this person in replace of that person, because they can't do it. And because I am a Catholic pilgrim, I want to remind people that it's possible to not only walk for someone else and pray for them with every step, but you are also able to earn an indulgence for them, which makes your pilgrimage that much more efficacious. The details on that are on the cathedral website, but essentially it typically involves visiting the tomb of Santiago and saying a prayer, receiving the Eucharist, and then also going to confession within 15 days of arrival, pre-arrival or post-arrival to Santiago. When we finally reach the end, limping, sunburned, and exhausted, we will be welcomed home. That's the promise of our pilgrim journey, not just in life, but in faith. If you're grieving and feeling drawn to the Camino, or even just to walking, listen to that instinct. I wasn't sure what or how to pray for a while after my mom died, but the walking is the prayer. I want to say that again. The walking is the prayer. If this video resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you walked a Camino in honor of someone, or has walking helped you process grief? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more reflections on pilgrimage and life. Buen Camino.